And hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. Glad you all could join us once again. I'm excited to be back with Dr. Velma Bagby today. You guys know her as a best-selling author, but she's also the host of her own podcast show that you guys can be able to see right here on Amazon called Dr. Velma Talks. I'm going to highlight it for you guys in the carousel here. There it is. So you guys can be able to make sure you're following her there. And she's also one of the hosts of another show here on Amazon Live, Word That Choose to Live By, that airs every Monday. We're going to talk to her about the very busy season that she finds herself in. She's also working on new projects as well as preparing for the season finale of her show, Dr. Velma Talks. If you guys are not staying connected with Dr. Velma, we'll let you know how to be able to do that. We are simulcasting our broadcast, so we welcome us tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. Susan, hello to you. Susan Hardstock, I see you over there on IG. Glad you could join us. If you guys have any questions or comments for Dr. Velma, feel free to be able to put those in the chat. But Dr. Velma, welcome back to the broadcast.
Thanks, Cyrus. It's a pleasure to be back with you today.
Well, look, it's a lot for us to catch up on. You've been very busy. I don't think our audience knows. You've been doing everything I've been talking about, and as well as moved. so
Yes.
So you've been moving in a lot of different ways.
That's true. Physical move.
Right. So let's talk about, we're in the home stretch of quarter three, Dr. Velma. We're wrapping up this quarter, wrapping up this month, really. Talk to us about what it's been like for you to continue to spread the messages through your books, to now they have this podcast. What has it been like for you to see the way that people are responding to it?
It's been really exciting. I'm feeling very gracious and fortunate that the response has been well. The comments that I've received, the support that I've received, it's very inspirational. And you can't help but want to continue what you're doing when you find that people are loving it.
Yeah, I love that. And for our audience that don't know, I mean, even though a lot of us, myself included, are just discovering Dr. Velma Talks, Dr. Velma actually has had a podcast before. So I'm curious, Dr. Velma, what was it like you going back to that and being able to share these new messages?
Well, it's interesting because when I started out before, I thought that was the only route I needed to take to really have a voice and to speak to the audience I felt that I was called to serve. And so I was comfortable doing that. But then I realized, wait a minute, I need to write this stuff down. Maybe there are folks out there who really want to read examples of some of the stories I talked about. And so that's what made me pause the podcast and create the book. So now I have a 4-book series with book 5 coming out soon. And so I'm excited about it, about going back to what I was doing in the beginning, and that was talking about it. It's really more, I feel like I'm free when I'm on the podcast, because when you're writing fiction, there's a certain style, there's certain parameters, there's certain rules you have to follow, but being able to talk freely, it's so wonderful. It feels so much better than trying to put it all in a book, but that's what I had to do to create that fictional series.
Yeah. And I should say, Dr. Velma, myself included in what I'm about to say, a lot of us came in on the chapter of your life when you were writing fiction. You and I started working together with your book, The Catch No One Wants. I'm going to highlight it for our audience over on Amazon. But you, before that, had written nonfiction. What was that transition like for you, going from nonfiction to fiction?
You know, I'm also an ordained minister, so we were trained to expound upon the word. Don't insert your personal opinion, just explain the scripture that you're talking about. So I thought that was the route to go, because many people in the Christian community don't really gravitate towards fiction. They prefer nonfiction. And so I thought that was the route I needed to take. And since it was a true reflection of the conversations I had with my own adult daughters about men and dating and marriage, it became a nonfiction book. And I used a boutique publisher, so I had to follow the instructions I was given. They pretty much controlled what needed to go in the book, all of that. I was new to the whole writing a book family. So I had to learn what I needed to learn and become more familiar with the process, so then I can take ownership on what I wanted to say. So again, it was like finding my voice again, which you and I talked about once before. Finding my voice, moving away from the corporate environment, and carrying the voice of the corporation I worked for, state government, then getting a boutique publisher who then controlled my voice at that point as well. And that's one of the reasons I explored self-publishing, and created my own LLC, Adonai Publishing, so that I can begin to produce my own books, so that my voice can come out in the process. So in writing the nonfiction, I realized I needed to follow the same storytelling method that Jesus used. We might call them allegories today, but they were fictional stories, the parables. He didn't want to make people feel bad about what he had to say. He didn't want to, you need to do this kind of a conversation. He simply told stories and weaved them so that the person's own problems were weaved into stories so that they can see themselves. And then at the end, it was up to them to make a decision as to whether or not they would receive what he had to say and make a change. So I felt free when I created the nonfiction book.
Love that. Wendy, hello to you. Good to be able to see you over there on the Amazon side. She says, you go, Dr. Velma. And hello to you, Nate Running D. Good to be able to see you over there on IG as well. And that's what I think is so interesting. And you brought up something that you and I have discussed, Dr. Velma, and that is you're part of an anthology, and you talked about the importance of trusting your voice, finding your voice. I want to ask you about trusting that voice, because since this was a new arena for you, even though it was a topic you were familiar with, did it take you some time to trust that you could do it? Or did it feel more comfortable even when you got into it, writing fiction, because of what you were used to doing?
I felt free the moment I recognized, I read a blog post where somebody was addressing that same issue. Why is it that the Christian community don't warm up to fictional stories? And when I read it and realized what the parables represented, they're fictional stories. Nobody really talks about them as fictional stories, but that's what they were. And they were intended to not be threatening to the person, but simply to help the person discover what they needed to know about themselves, the position they were in, the decisions they were making, and so that they would know a path out, or how to turn it around, how to change. And that's when I read that, that's when I felt free. That's when I felt like, now I know what my voice should be. I should be weaving my stories the very same way Jesus weaved the parables. And that's exactly what I did in these stories. I knew plenty of examples of wrong dating methods, of wrong choices. So I didn't have to research that. I knew many of them. I just had to be free in terms of what approach I should use. And that's the approach I used. I used the similar approach that Jesus used with the parables.
Yeah. And it's been great being able to watch. Wendy says the Catch series is a must-have. I totally agree with that, Wendy. And I think that's the thing. And I say to Dr. Velma a lot when we're talking about the Catch series, there will always be, I mean, for any of us who are authors, no matter how many books we've written, there always will be people say, oh, I didn't know you had that, or I didn't know you had written that. So what has that experience been like for you, Dr. Velma? I know you had an experience you were relating recently on your podcast about, I think it was one of the movers you were talking to about writing. What has it been like for you to keep reintroducing yourself to a new audience?
It's fun. It's really exciting because it says there's still more that needs to know. There's still a group of people out there that hasn't discovered the books, that really need the books. And I really appreciate many of the readers who say, I need to get this for my friend. I need to order this for someone I know. And even Wendy's on board, and she talked about getting it for her sons. But it's important for us to know that it's not only just the person themselves. Some people see something that another person could benefit from. I remember, I think I shared with you the story of my doctor's receptionist who was talking about a friend that was in an abusive relationship. And I gave her the Black book, the first one, because the sixth story deals with an abusive relationship, toxic relationship. And she told me about a friend that was stuck in a situation. I said, look, give her the book. Tell her specifically to read chapter 6. And the next time I ran into her, she said she gave that book to her friend. And despite all the friends telling her she needed to get out of this relationship, it was only when she read that story that she recognized the situation she was in.
Wow. That's amazing. Really shows that, and I say to people that sometimes fiction is the truth a lot of people need because it's easier to digest.
Absolutely.
It's less judgmental. And people can feel like, they can apply it to whatever they want to, including themselves. I want to say for those who are just tuning in, welcome. You're watching Cyrus Web Presents here on Amazon Live. We also are simulcasting, so we welcome those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, X, and on Instagram. We're speaking with Dr. Velma Bagby today. Dr. Velma is the author of several books. You can find them here on Amazon, both fiction and nonfiction. She's also the host, I'm going to highlight it again, of Dr. Velma Talks, the podcast that's gearing up for season finale soon, too. And Dr. Velma is the co-host of the return of my show here on Amazon, Word That You Choose to Live By. So be honest with me, Dr. Velma. When I first invited you to be a co-host for Word That You Choose to Live By, what did you think?
I felt fortunate that you chose me to participate. And then I was excited when I found out the other co-hosts because I really like them. I really like Tina Simmons, and I really have gained a respect and friendship with Melissa. So, and I've watched her and you on previous episodes. So I was excited and I felt fortunate to be included.
Yeah. You know what I thought was funny in many ways is your return to nonfiction, right? because
Right.
since we have messages around my book, and I think that's the cool thing. And I want to bring that up for this reason too, Dr. Velma, because I know you're gearing up to actually do some in-person events too. You have shared before, but I want you to share with our audience. What has that been like for you? It's one thing for you to, a lot of times authors say they feel like they're in a bubble when they're writing because it's just them and the page, right? But then when you release a book, when you're out there meeting people, it really opens up the world to you. You've had a lot of success with in-person events. What has that been like for you to meet some of your readers and to see the way that they respond to your books in person?
Well, one of the things I found very exciting was the fact that I presented the Catch series. Well, at the time, it was just the Black Book, Book One, at the Christian Book Lovers Retreat, maybe about 3 years ago. Last year, I was scheduled to present another workshop following the year that I had attended. It was so well received that the participants were asking, where's the lady with the fish stories? Because the fish analogies in the book, the men are described as fish in the book. And so they were expecting me to return, but because of my injury last year, I couldn't go. So I'm excited to see my name on the schedule regarding the workshop I'm getting ready to present, because it's an exercise for them to try to discover if they can create a list of the correct characteristics they should be looking for in a man. I have photos of the men in front, and they have to try to pick out. And these are all characters from the book. And so it's fun, but at the same time, when they are able to do the deep dive and we're able to have a discussion around what they chose as what they felt were characteristics, sometimes they realize in that conversation that they didn't choose the correct ones. And so we have fun, and I love the engagement, but I was really blessed to hear that they were looking for me last year. Where's the lady with the fish workshop?
Love that. Jacqueline, hello to you. Jacqueline's over there on Facebook. She says, my girl, talking to you as well. So we've been talking about the fiction, and Wendy says, Dr. Velma is so amazing. Happy that the Catch series brought us together. And she also says we can relate to the characters in real time. I want to talk about what Wendy was just saying, Dr. Velma, because you, for those who don't know, again, as Dr. Velma mentioned, this is the first book, The Catch No One Wants. But then she went on to write 2 books, The Wrong Catch, which kind of amplifies the message of The Catch, where we're able to see Veronica, the main character of the Catch No One Wants, kind of take a more of a teacher role in the book along with her father. And then there's The Catch, She'll Tear Down the House, which is really for us guys, but it's also a great conversation piece for women as well. I want to talk about the male audience for you, because it was interesting seeing the evolution for you, Dr. Velma, in some ways. When you and I first start working together, you were talking about your target audience and what you found to be your audience being women. What has it been like for you to see, though, how men have picked up on this series too?
That was really surprising for me, but it really blessed me to hear about that because the books are designed that, even though I had women in mind in the first and second book, the stories are designed so that men can learn from the stories as well. And as well in the third book, She'll Tear Down the House, women can learn from those stories too, because these are characteristics you don't want to have as a woman. You don't want to, and if you do, you want to make sure you're fixing or changing it. And so it was fun and really exciting for me to hear from the men. So what I did was I talked to several of the men that I knew, godly men who have been in the dating scene recently, and wanted to know what were some of the challenges and problems they had, so that I can create truthful stories around some of the things they told me, and that's how those characters came to be.
Love that. Love that. And I'm going to move these to the side for a moment because the fourth book in the series goes back to your roots, Dr. Balma, and nonfiction. And that is the Catch Book of Fools. And for those of you on Amazon, I'm going to highlight it for you guys there. And you will see some of Dr. Balma's other nonfiction books there. But I'm going to go ahead and highlight it for you guys. So talk to us about what led you to do the Catch Book of Fools, Dr. Balma.
Well, it came out of the fact that I discovered my audience is both logical readers on one side and emotional readers on the other side. So I had to figure out a way. Most of the fictional stories will satisfy both too, but the logical reader only to a certain extent, because the logical reader likes scriptures. They want you to give them a reference. They want you to explain what the scripture says. The emotional readers just want the stories that touch, that resonate, all of that. And so I thought, even though I weaved some truths in the stories, I wanted to make sure I could provide to those who want scripture references to see them. And not only that, I think it would open up the eyes of people who weren't familiar with the scripture, so that they can see, really, God gave us over 200 references. I only used 80. So you can see that he gave us some tools that we can use. And like you and I discussed, not only in dating, but in business too, friendships too. If they have this kind of behavior, we know that we should not be dealing with them. So that's why the Catch Book of Fools came to be, because it talks about those 80 scriptures and highlights and says, and gives you something to take a look and then pause and contemplate, what does this mean to me in my dating life? How can I use this now? So I thought it was important to have it.
Yeah. Jacqueline says great cover. And it brings up an interesting thing as you were talking, Dr. Velma. I thought the saying is, what a difference a day makes. I should say, what a difference 5 months makes. Can you believe it's been 5 months
Yeah.
since the release of this book? And you've done so much since then.
Yes.
I mean, you started your podcast again. That's one of the big things. Of course, as you mentioned, booking speaking engagements as well. What is it that made you say, though, that this was a book that was ready, that was right for now? Because I think it's so interesting, as you mentioned, it's a great connection to the series, but it
Yeah.
also is a great standalone book too. I
Yeah.
mean, you were. I know. I remember when you were telling me about this book. You wanted to come out on April 1st. It did. But what did you hope people take away from this book, as you mentioned, in all aspects of their lives?
Some truth, something that they can use for themselves. And I joke about the fact that this should be in your dating toolbox, because you need to know what a fool looks like, acts like, the behavior you should recognize. Because one of the things I say regularly to women and men too is, we fall in love with strangers. You really don't know who they are. You fall in love with the substance, what you see on the outside, what I call conditions, and you really don't pay attention to what I refer to as red flags. And that's what the Book of Fools will show you. These are red flags. If you see someone behaving like this, acting like this, refuses to hear, that's one of them, refuses to listen. A fool refuses to listen to any wise advice. One that brags about the things that they do foolishly. All of those things are red flags. If you would pay attention to them, now that you have them in the book, then that helps people to identify the behavior. So I'm excited about it.
Well, and if I can go one step further than that, Dr. Belma, because we see it in the fictional, both for the men and the women, not just identifying it, but then taking action. you know, a
Well,
lot of times,
yes.
a lot of times we see these things and we still just keep going forward. Like the scripture talks about, like a bull headed to the slaughter. I mean, it's fascinating because we all have our blind spots, I call them. What has that been like for you to show the danger of inaction? Because you showed that both in the wrong catch
Yeah.
and the wrong
Yeah.
catch return in the house. What has that been like for you to share those warning examples there?
It's interesting that red is red for a reason. Red is always the color for danger, and sometimes you wonder if people are colorblind. Hey, that's a red flag. Did you hear that? Did you see what they just did? Did you hear what they just said? And
Yeah.
it's amazing to me. People make excuses for them sometimes and say, "Oh, they're just like that because." And
Mhm.
it's sad to hear that, but there's been some very dangerous situations people put themselves in because of it. But I think it's important for us to recognize those red flags, pay attention that the color is red for a reason, and then respond accordingly. Get out of there. Run, Forrest, run. You see red, you better run.
That is right. That is right. Exactly. And I kind of caught me off guard there for a second. but that's
Isn't
but
it true though?
yeah, no, it's totally true. It's totally true. Um, and I think again that's what makes this such a great thing. So again, everyone, if you have not gotten the books in the Catch series, you can. Wendy says you better run. But so again, if you have not gotten the books in the series, you can be able to get them here on Amazon. You will notice I'm going to tick through them here for you guys. We were just talking about the Catch Book of Fools. You see it's there. It's $10, or you can get the Kindle edition there for $2.99. The Catch No One Wants, that's here. You can get it for $12.99, or you can be able to get the Kindle edition for $3.99. You can take advantage of that. And then you have the Wrong Catch. You can get the Kindle edition of it for $2.99. So make sure you guys take advantage of that. And the Wrong Catch, She'll Tear Down the House. You can get the Kindle edition of that for $4.99, or the paperback is $14.99. While you're there on Amazon, if you're on the Amazon side, make sure you guys also pick up another one of my favorite books from Dr. Velma. She celebrated her 50th wedding anniversary this year. Her book, My 70s Love Story, I'm going to highlight it for you guys over there on Amazon. It's only 99 cents. And currently it's only in Kindle, so make sure you guys take advantage of that. Jacqueline puts up the run emojis too over there on Facebook. Dr. Velma, a lot of things. Hey, Robbie, good to be able to see you over there on Instagram. Glad you could join us. So, Dr. Velma, a lot going on with you. As I mentioned, you have the season finale coming up of Dr. Velma Talks. Let our audience know how they can stay connected with you and keep up with all the updates.
Yeah, make sure that you subscribe to my webpage, drvelmabagby.com. And there's a blog located on my website that highlights many of the conversations I've had during the episode. So you can go back and read some of those, find something interesting. Then that way you can go back and take advantage of listening to the entire episode. And then I'm on YouTube. So please make sure you subscribe my YouTube page as well. So that would be, I'm also on all the social media platforms, but the best way to stay connected is through my website.
All right. Dr. Velma, congratulations to you, and looking forward to our next chat together.
Thanks, Cyrus. Me too.
And we thank your audience for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Bye.